Here we are live.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to Wednesday's webinar here at 6 Mountain Time and 5 Pacific Time, 7 Central and 8 Eastern Time. It's Jeff and Kim with FEWL. And I'm going to carry on with what we're doing today.
Yeah, well, first of all, if you don't know Jeff and I already, we both have almost 25 years experience in the nutrition field, health field, with functional nutrition coaching, and we're excited to be working together with our online functional nutrition coaching platform called FEWL.
Indeed, absolutely. It's been really quite a journey. So here we are, pursuing our passions, which is helping other people as well. And so today we want to spend 20 minutes with you to break down a little bit more deeply into our fantastic hormone test, our Dutch hormone test, which will give you not only what your hormone levels are for many different key hormones, from your sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen through to your stress hormones and etc., things that affect your body in many ways. So we want to take a little drill down into one hormone in particular, the stress hormone or the belly fat hormone, the craving hormone, and also the sleep hormone, cortisol. So we'll take about 20 minutes tonight to do that and have some question and answers. And as we leave, we'll set this up for next week's webinar, which will be melatonin, specifically around sleep and mood. So cortisol is it for tonight.
Right. So tonight we want to help you understand the correlation between your belly fat, between your sleep problems, between your cravings and chronic stress. And what do all of those horrible symptoms that most of us are living with to some level or another, all of those things have cortisol in common. So what is cortisol? Most of us understand that cortisol is a stress hormone. It really is your adrenal glands, your adrenal cortex, which sit on top of the kidneys, produce a hormone called cortisol when you're under stress. And that's the fight or flight response is then triggered by this release of cortisol. And it's a really important hormone. It's really needed. It has anti-inflammatory effects when it's in the right amount and helps us manage stress. And then, however, if there's too much of it, it can cause excess inflammation and cause belly fat and stress and sleep problems and cravings, as you can see on our board there. And there's also a problem if there's not enough of it as well, because you need some to help manage things like inflammation if you get hurt or if you're stressed out in the moment. But if it's chronically overused, your stress response system is chronically overused, then you can have the opposite effect of too little cortisol being produced, which is also a problem. Not only how much you produce, too high or too low amounts of cortisol, is an effect on your health, but also the rate at which you're producing or how much you're producing at different times of the day. So Jeff, you want to take over kind of how that rhythm works?
Well, I was going to say that's a really good point. Most people don't realize this. If you go to a physician and you get a traditional blood test, poke you on the arm and pull some blood out, two things. One, it's only measuring your hormone level at that particular time. It's not telling you what's happening all across the day. And the other thing is, and this is really, really awesome with this new technology, it doesn't even tell you how your body is actually using whatever you're producing. So it's not just a matter of how much you make or how little, it's also really most important how you're actually using this stuff in the first place. Because maybe you're making lots, but if you're not using it, well, that's probably going to be too low. You're going to get symptoms from too low and vice versa. Right. So a typical, or what is supposed to be a rhythm for cortisol, I'll just draw quickly on our board, and we'll show you some of these pieces in our tests and talk about them. A typical cortisol pattern, it's kind of like a spike when it goes up. If this is the morning, and then it starts to taper off through the day and through the evening before it spikes again as you get to the morning.
So about 30 minutes after you wake, it starts to spike, and that gives you energy to get your day going, right? It gets you up, gets you going. One of the things that spikes that in the morning is sunlight. So we get up, we see the sun, it tells the signals come into our brain that it's time to wake up, and the cortisol levels start to spike and give us energy. And then what should happen is later in the morning, then early afternoon, it kind of starts to fade and calm down, so then we can start to unwind and relax so that we can sleep at night.
Exactly. So it's often called the wake-up hormone. Unfortunately, what happens too is if anybody wakes up in the middle of the night, there may be a number of reasons for that to happen. But if you're eating later in the night, that will often spike your cortisol about 4 to 5 hours later. So later eating spikes cortisol, which is the wake-up hormone, and people often wake up at 2 and 3 in the morning and wonder why they're awake at 2 and 3 in the morning, and it's tied to actually the timing that you eat. So that's the basic pattern, but there are, what we see in our practices is working with lots of clients like yourselves and doing these really simple urine tests for these hormones. What we see is there's a commonality that presents with people in terms of where their patterns are. People may be too high, they may be too low, or they may be flatlined. And each of those patterns represents certain symptoms or outcomes in your day-to-day. So I think Kim really wants to speak a little bit further about that also.
Yeah, so the three things that Jeff and I typically see are either one, somebody is producing a whole lot of cortisol, and often those people have spiked cortisol levels throughout the day, and that's a real simple case of overproduction of cortisol. You're often really stressed out. You very typically see belly fat, cravings, and chronic sleep problems, because when cortisol levels are high throughout the day instead of dropping at night, then obviously, as Jeff said earlier, you're going to have a hard time sleeping. We see another pattern where there might be cortisol made but not accessible for your cells to use. So when that's the case, you're making some, but you're not able to use it. So we're going to address those two different situations differently with different protocols. So it's really helpful to know not just how much you're making, but how well you're using it. And the next scenario is the difference in when people use it. So some people are using in a nice pattern. They might have too much of it, but it's in the right rhythm, meaning it spikes in the morning and then goes down. Some of our clients are totally flatlined. They don't have a spike and they don't come down. It's just the same level of hormone being produced and utilized throughout the day. So we see the too much, too little, and rhythm being off. And as I said earlier, all those scenarios need to be treated in different ways. So we're going to have different suggestions for each individual person based on their exact rhythm and their levels that they're producing and the levels that they're using.
There's some symptoms that are associated with these. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
There's a long list of symptoms that most of you are probably having a lot of these symptoms, and so it's hard to then, because these symptoms also correlate with a lot of other things that could be going on in your body. So the best way is to, as we say in functional medicine, test, not guess. So if you have the ability to do the Dutch test, that's the easiest way to see exactly where you're at and pinpoint your protocol. However, things like morning exhaustion, even after a really good night's sleep, you wake up and you're still exhausted, energy crashing later after lunch or later in the afternoon, that's also very correlated with blood sugar levels and timing of your meals, as Jeff was saying. Difficulty recovering from exercise. Exercise can be a stress, and a good stress for some of us, but if we have excessive levels of cortisol, it's not a good idea to do hardcore heavy-duty cardio, because that can cause so much stress that we can't recover well from it. So then we can see really difficult time gaining endurance and gaining progress with your workouts because you're too exhausted. Susceptibility, to viruses and immune suppression. Cortisol plays a really important role in your immune system and anti-inflammatory properties to help manage things that you might come into contact with to help your immune system overcome that your system is suppressed with too much cortisol or too little cortisol. The second wind that you get late at night, many people say, oh, I'm just a night person. They're exhausted all day, and then they, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, they feel great. They're really off. Their rhythm is typically really off. It is much better to be sleeping when it's dark and wake up when it's light. Insomnia and sleep disturbances are really common. Low sex drive is a very common complaint for people that have dysregulation of these cortisol rhythms. Poor memory, big one. That's a big complaint for a lot of our clients, is that foggy brain. Besides the fatigue, the foggy brain is really disruptive of your normal life and your normal day-to-day activities. Belly fat, as we talked about, and cravings. Typically salt cravings, often sugar cravings, but salt cravings is a good indicator that cortisol is pretty off. Low body temperature and hypothyroidism, thyroid issues can be really, well, actually thyroid and adrenal really go hand in hand. So if one is off, I suspect that the other one needs a little support as well. All sex hormone imbalances, postural hypotension, so when you get dizzy when you stand up or you faint, skin rashes and breakouts can be a sign of cortisol issues, decreased stress tolerance, and when you feel better right after eating and then you feel worse again, that can be another sign of dysregulation of the cortisol hormones.
For sure. And probably everybody's pretty aware of this one, craving caffeine. Needing a caffeine boost or needing something to get you up or keep you going. Classic symptom with cortisol, what we call dysregulation. Again, whether it's too high or too low or you're just not using it, that's dysregulation, and we'd like to figure out which one of those is applying to you and how to personalize a program for you to correct that.
Right. So you can go to our website and we actually have some assessments that might help you figure out if you have some dysregulation going on. And then of course ordering the Dutch test is another great way to pinpoint what your unique situation is. Though once we find out where your dysregulation is or what's going on with your hormones, then what are we going to do about it?
Right.
That's the big question.
That's the big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
So typically with functional nutrition, we are working with diet and lifestyle. So we're always going to be able to support you with figuring out what is the best food protocol for you. And it really is different. If you have high levels of cortisol versus low levels of cortisol, if you do have other hormonal dysregulation going on, we're going to take that into account and come up with a program that has the right amount of carbohydrates, fats, and protein for where you're at right now. And as we've talked about in the past, is where you're at right now is going to change. So we're going to work with you throughout the weeks and the months to figure out where you're at and if we need to change or modify your program. But we will figure out what is the right amount of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins for you with where you're at and where your hormones are at.
Indeed, absolutely. The other thing that we'll take a look at is obviously your sleep. And a lot of people mistakenly believe that more sleep is what we need. You have to get 7 to 8 hours or 8 to 9 hours, whatever it happens to be. And the reality is that there's a difference between quantity and quality. We look for what's called appropriate sleep. And so certainly hormone regulation, right? This is the wake-up hormone, and where that peak happens is really important for your sleep. We're going to take a look at what we can do to get you more appropriately sleeping. As a sidebar, part of your sleep is with regards to this hormone. Part of your sleep is regards to other hormones, which our urine test also tests for. And part of it is also wrapped into other parts of your body, like your gut health. But that's for another topic. So we take a look at all of those things, whether it's diet, whether it's sleep, whether it's activity, to see what works for you in order to get your pattern back to where it should be. And that's probably one of the bigger pieces right there too, is activity or exercise. In our programs, we don't require that you exercise. Sure, it's great if you do, but it's not necessary because we're fixing what we call these root causes, and hormone balance being one of them. But one of the things that this test will show you, and in particular with the cortisol and how you metabolize it, it will actually show you and show us what kind of exercise you should be doing. Should it be more cardio focused, or should it be more instead towards a higher or a lower intensity, more strength training, etc.? Because each one of those kinds of activities actually specifically changes different hormone complexions in your body. So we can tailor that with what works to you to accelerate any of these repairs and rebalancings that we speak about.
Right, thank you, Jeff. And movement is crucial, so we're recommending movement all the time, but the kind of formal exercise that you do is really going to need to be tailored to where you're at and where you want to get over time. So that's something that with the FEWL program we'll work with you on that. One thing also that I think is really important here is the stress component. If your cortisol rhythm is off or your cortisol production is off, either too high or too low, there is a stress component. That is a stress response hormone. This is a stress response axis. We're dealing with lots of different hormones in this axis, and you can't get better if you don't manage stress, period. And that's one of the reasons why we love this platform where we can connect with you, because every day you need to find a way to decrease or manage your stress a little bit better. And I think that's why so many people fail in achieving the health that they want, because they don't really understand the importance of stress management, or they don't have the tools to decrease the stress in their life. So eating well, sleeping well is going to help. We'll talk about some stress management supplements that you can use as well. But the bottom line is, if you don't deal with your stress and your ability to manage that stress more specifically, stress is going to happen. We all have stress. But addressing how you can manage that and deal with that is probably the most important part in your healing journey.
Indeed, absolutely. So, I think we just have about 4 or 5 minutes left before we were going to open it up for Q&A and whatnot. It's another piece that we look at around stress, and there is stress management, but there's also appropriate stress management. So again, we'll speak about, or we'll work with you on what's most appropriate for you. Whether or not that's actually changing your genetic makeup, it's true, you can do this simply by sitting and breathing quietly for 5 minutes a day. In 3 months, you'll have changed the expression of more than 3,000 genes. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, which are all wrapped up in this. It's kind of a la carte. It's not one size fits all, and it's certainly not, you have to do it all. Instead, you can cherry pick what works for you, when it works for you, etc., in order to rebalance these things. But I think there's 2 pieces that, just in the next couple of minutes, that I want to speak about, and I'm sure Kim has some other pieces too. We work with supplements. We work with medical grade supplements that we will find out where you're at and what you're doing and what you need, so that we can provide you the advice of which medical grade supplement. These are vitamins and minerals, but what they do is they boost your systems and they accelerate the repair. I certainly can speak from personal experience. I could share with you my own Dutch test, which we're going to post on our website, FEWL, FEWL.io. And you can see how my cortisol and my melatonin and all these different hormones have shifted and changed in such a short time. And a big part of it, I only did a small change to my diet. I removed some coffee, and I limited my sweets. That in itself wasn't nearly enough to affect the change that you can see in my hormone complexion. But I did add on 4 supplements that were recommended in order to boost how I was using my hormones, and in literally 5 weeks I've had a really big change. So now I'm changing those supplements, I'm decreasing them, etc. But without those targeted supplements, I wouldn't have had that acceleration in the repair of my body. And the other piece of all of this, I think this is pretty close to most people, is whether it's sleep or cravings or stress, cortisol is also known as the belly fat hormone. So when you're dysregulating, or you're not making it at the right time, or not using it the right way, you're going to get fat right here in the middle. Those love handles are going to show up, or those flanks, or the muffin top, or whatever you want to call it. It's going to show up right here. And it's probably the biggest reason why people struggle with what's called the last 10 pounds. There are some other reasons, much around what Kim had talked about, inflammation and other things, but if you're not correcting your hormones, you're not going to get rid of that last 10 pounds, no matter how much you exercise or do sit-ups or change your diet. It'll never happen.
It won't happen, yeah.
Right.
If I may talk about one of the favorite supplements that I like to recommend to clients, whether your cortisol levels are too high or too low, you're really safe with an herb called rhodiola. That one it's called an adaptogen, meaning it helps your body adapt to stress. So whether you're producing too much, too little cortisol, or the rhythm is off, rhodiola can really calm the system but give you energy and really nourish and repair your adrenals and support balanced and better functioning of those adrenal glands, and therefore the output of the cortisol. There's a few other herbs in a formula we have called Adrenal Boost. It has the rhodiola that I love so much, and has cordyceps, and it has ginseng, both other adaptogens that are really good, and B-complex vitamins that are crucial in stress management. So that's a really safe product to use if you don't have the ability right now to do the Dutch test and you're not sure if you're too high or too low, but you really do have a sense that something's off with your cortisol pattern. Then the Adrenal Boost is a great way to nourish your stress response system. And then another product I highly recommend for most people is called phosphatidylserine. And this is a phospholipid. It has amino acids and essential fatty acids, and those two things work together to help heal and repair the cell membrane. The cell membrane is really important because that's kind of the structure that allows communication to happen between the cells, and it's where the receptor sites for hormones sit on your cell membrane. So if your cell membrane is not healthy, then the good stuff can't come in and the bad stuff can't get out. So you can't have healthy functioning cells without healthy membranes. So the phosphatidylserine is another thing that you can take, whether you're dysregulated too high or too low amount of cortisol. This is a really helpful product to support you in regulating your hormones so that they function better. It's also typically used for brain health, for memory. It's used for athletic performance. It's used for ADD and ADHD and Alzheimer's and a ton of other things for the nervous system. But I really love it for balancing the stress hormones. So phosphatidylserine and adrenal boost are great recommendations if you're not sure where you're at, where you fall with your hormone levels.
Indeed, absolutely. So I'm just a little distracted here, seeing if there's any Q&A out there in the world. I don't see any right now, but please, if there's any, ask away.
And I can't check my screen because my screen is videotaping us.
That's right, exactly.
So we're just on the FEWL page looking.
Wonderful. Well, I don't see any Q&A that are popping up right away. But that all said, if you have any questions, please feel free to give a call or send an email. Again, our website is FEWL.io, and we're available almost anytime and almost anywhere. So we will get back to you if we're not working with another client. And certainly, please feel free as well to check out our website, our Facebook, and look at all these great videos and our YouTube channel and testimonials and a lot of the different resources that we have. But if you're really interested to learn more and take a deeper dive, we do a complimentary or a free strategy session. We'll spend a half hour with you, or sometimes even longer, depending on how busy we are, but at least a half hour with you, going through what your situation is. And we have a few assessments posted onto the website, simple little assessments that you can fill out in just a couple minutes, and they're medical design. So they'll really give you an indication of where you're at and where you want to get to. But after speaking with us, we will forward another link with multitudes of other assessments, depending on what it is that you're looking for. So you can really help to more self-diagnose where you're at in a very accurate way. So very much appreciated. Again, next Wednesday is the continuation of today. Our urine hormone testing kit is super simple and is unbelievable. It's taking the market by storm. In fact, all over the world, people are using this kit because it's replacing blood tests. You can do it in your own home. It's inexpensive or very affordable. It's a great kit. But it tests so many different hormones that are related to overall health, weight, well-being, stress, sleep, the whole full meal deal. So that said, next week, I think we're going to roll into something that kind of related to gut health and related to all of these as well. And we'll take a deeper dive into what next week?
Melatonin. Talking about melatonin next week. So melatonin is actually something that I get a lot of questions on. And there's some controversy around supplementation with melatonin. So we're going to talk about natural melatonin, how your body produces melatonin and what it does for you, what your levels should be at, and if you suspect that they're off, we can work with you on that and give you some tips on how to improve your melatonin status. So stay tuned for next Wednesday. Talk about melatonin.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. As always, again, too, we very much appreciate your support. We certainly appreciate working with you all. Our business is 100% referral-based. Very much appreciate the word of mouth and the referrals that you keep providing to us, because the message is just percolating throughout the community, and it's fantastic.
Thanks to you.
Thanks to you.
Thanks
exactly.
so much.
Have a good night.
Good night.
I'm just going to stay on a piece of my candy.
Hi, Candy. Jeff. Finish. Video uploaded. Okay.
Not quite.
Okay. End. It's not letting me. It's literally not letting me push
This is
the
like the
button.
blooper rolls.
All right, I'm gonna have to.